My advance announcement is that if you want to take off your tie, if you have one on, feel free. Should we go ahead? What? Okay. Okay, this is the meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority Planning Committee of July the 1st. Thank you all for coming. And there are 4 members present. Dave Hudson is not yet here, but we do. I'm sorry. I did that wrong. David Durant. Once a Dave, always a Dave. David Durant is not here, but we are expecting him, I believe. The next item on the agenda is public comment. I don't have any slips. Are there any members of the public that would like to speak on items that are not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes of June 3rd.
Move approval.
Okay, there's a motion by Kevin Romick, seconded by Karen Mitchoff. All in favor, please say aye. 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 Okay. Unanimous. Okay. With that, we will move on to the consent calendar, which is items. Okay, that's items 1, 2, and 3. You were second. Wait a minute. Who was first? Karen was first, and Dave Hudson, got it right, is the seconder. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition or abstention? Motion carries unanimously. And that takes us to item number 4 on our agenda. And that's the release of the draft 2015 Congestion Management Plan. Is there a report?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, committee members. I'm here tonight to present the release of the draft 2015 Congestion Management Program, or the CMP. The CMP is a state requirement for congestion management agencies like ourselves. It was established in 1991 by the California State Legislature. As the CMA for Contra Costa, we are required to update our CMP at least every other year. That's why we come back to you every odd year to do this. I'll try and keep this brief since you do see this every other year. The 2015 CMP is our 12th for the county. The CMP has 5 required components. We must establish level of service standards for a countywide roadway network and all of the state highways in the county, and includes principal arterials. We are required to establish performance measures to evaluate the current and future multimodal performance of the system for the movement of people and goods. We must prepare a capital improvement program that identifies projects that seek to maintain or improve the performance of the multimodal system. We are required to have a program that analyzes the effects of land use decisions on the regional transportation system. And finally, we are required to have a travel demand element that promotes transportation alternatives to the single occupant vehicle. Just a little bit of background on the CMP. Like I mentioned, it was established statewide in '91, at which time the legislature used CCTA's recently established growth management program as the model for CMP legislation. So for that reason, for many of the CMP requirements, we do defer to our growth management program to satisfy the goals of the CMP. We do, however, use the CMP to document our current activities, policies, and major milestones here at the authority. We use it for the biannual arterial and freeway congestion monitoring, and we use it to update our our capital improvement program, or the CIP. And the CIP is a listing of projects that will be seeking regional, state, or federal funding over the next 7 years. And in order to update this, we used all of the project information that was received as part of the 2014 countywide plan process to update the CIP. So we also plan to add any new projects that come about during the RTP and TEP calls for projects that are going on right now, if there are any new projects that come out of that process. So the CIP through this update grew from $1.1 billion in 2013 to $12.4 billion in 2015, so an increase in about $1.3 billion in capital projects. Another focus of the update was to document our current performance measures used by the authority and our partners, including those metrics that are used by each of our transit providers. We document the MTSOs from our action plans, and a new set of performance measures that were used as part of the Smart Mobility Framework in the I-680 CSMP, and those are Caltrans's performance measures. So we document all performance measures that we use, no matter if they're ours or our partners. A major component of the CMP, and the one that we devote the most resources to financially, is the level of service monitoring that we do at 65 intersections around the county and all of the freeway segments. This allows us to track changes in the performance of the system over time, and the authority has added bike and pedestrian counts to the monitoring as well, so we're getting more of a multimodal tracking of the system as well. A monitoring report documenting the status of the level of service standards will be released this September. And this CMP update also documents the changes to level of service in California due to the recent passage of Senate Bill SB 743. An associated bill, Assembly Bill 1098, seeks to incorporate those changes in level of service to the CMP process, because right now there's kind of a disconnect between the two. And this would presumably change the metric used in our CMP from level of service to VMT or some other non-vehicle delay-based measure, but it wouldn't preclude us from continuing to report level of service in addition to the new measures. We will also, under separate cover, submit a report to MTC documenting our travel demand model's consistency with the regional model. MTC hasn't yet issued their guidance for the 2015 CMP process. They normally do that in the late spring. But if there are any changes that affect our report, we will incorporate those items from MTC's guidance during the draft review period. So staff's recommendation tonight is to circulate the draft CMP to the RTPCs, our neighboring CMAs, and any other interested parties for further review and comment through October 9th. Those comments will be incorporated into the draft and submitted to MTC for their staff level review. The item then comes back in December for adoption by the authority. So that's the item.
Thank you. We have been joined by Authority Member David Durant. Okay, yes. I was trying, right? Okay, are there any questions from the members of the committee? Okay, are there any questions or comments from the audience? Okay. Okay, there's a motion by Karen Mitchoff, seconded by David Hudson. Thank you very much. All in favor? I know. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item number 5. Is there a staff report?
Good evening, Madam Chair, Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at Contra Costa Transportation Authority. Item 5 is to tell you about the status of the Growth Management Program checklist approvals, and the deadline of June 30th is actually behind us now. We're wrapping up the compliance checklist season for calendar years 2012 and 2013. We released this checklist in early 2014, and the jurisdictions of Contra Costa are required to fill out the checklist and report to us on their growth management program activities and represent to us that they have complied with all of the requirements of the growth management program. In return, jurisdictions receive 18% local street maintenance and improvement funds. In West County, an additional 2.09% of local street funds depends upon compliance with the growth management program. There is 5% of our gross revenues in transportation for livable communities, and those funds also are tied to compliance with the growth management program. Jurisdictions have 18 months to fill out this checklist, and we're, as of June 30th, at the close of the period for them to submit. There are 5 jurisdictions that haven't yet submitted their checklist, but we've contacted all of them. We've contacted the staff, and they seem to have scheduled their checklist approvals, most of them for June. Hercules, Martinez, Richmond, and San Pablo are all scheduled, should have been approved by their councils in June, so they've actually met the requirement. There's one jurisdiction, the city of Pinole, and we just learned that they are actually scheduled now for July 7th. Normally, we would require, if a jurisdiction was a long ways from completing their checklist, we would require that they give us what's called a statement of progress. And that tells us, what's going on, what are the issues they're trying to address, and we simply hold on to their funds until they can get their all the yes boxes checked yes on the checklist, so that they're found in compliance. In the case of Pinole, since they're already on the agenda for next week, early next week, I think it would be our recommendation to you to waive this statement of progress requirement, waive that formality, and just count on the approval on July 7th, and we'll go ahead and process these 5 remaining checklists. There's a total of $13.6 million in funds to be allocated. We've already allocated about $11 million of that, and $2.6 million is outstanding to be paid to these 5 jurisdictions. That'll be paid out probably in September, since these late checklists will go to our Citizens Advisory Committee in July. We go dark in August. We'll come back in September, and these 5 checklists will be on your docket for your approval, and then we'll make the payment in September. And that's the first payment. There's a second payment called the off-year payment, which is made automatically on the anniversary of the first payment. So we ask for just your acknowledgement of the status and accept staff's report and extend the deadline for the city of Pinole. We're suggesting that you extend it to July 31st to allow them time to approve the checklist and process it and get it over to us.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Martin, the action portion of this is just the extension of the deadline. That's all you're asking for Pinole. The rest is just accept the report.
That's correct.
Okay. I'll wait until Karen chimes in, but I certainly would move, not change it to July 7th, stay with the 31st. We'll have an update at the regular meeting, and it'll be done.
Well, that's my question, is these 4 jurisdictions, yesterday or today, and rather than waiting until September to look at them, and if Pinole gets theirs in, can they just come directly to the authority 2 weeks from tonight, which is what, the 15th, or do we have to? I mean, I know we could look at it, but if staff has looked at them and they seem to meet the requirements, wouldn't it be just faster to put everybody on for approval on July 15th?
We could certainly do that, Supervisor Mitchoff, if you were interested in doing that, we could do that. However, you would have to waive a requirement in the process. We have an adopted procedure that we take the checklist to our Citizens Advisory Committee, and their last meeting already happened in June, and so you would
I
have
see.
to miss
Okay.
that.
So
If
they've
you-
seen all the other cities ones?
They've seen all the other
Oh,
cities,
okay.
and we're actually taking the whole committee to Growth Management Checklist School on the July meeting. So it would be good for them, in addition to having the training. We have a lot of new members, and they're what I call the bad cops for growth management, because they really look at this checklist
Well,
and they
then, okay,
research it, and
You've
they.
answered the
Yeah,
only reason I
so-
was asking this was because we go dark in August.
Right.
Because I normally would say, just let it go, a normal thing, but that's a very legitimate reason, so that answers my question, so.
Second motion.
I move the last thing, you move this one.
Okay, I move this. And extend it to the 31st. Accept the report and extend the deadline
Of what month?
of July.
Okay.
I move that we accept the report and extend the deadline for Pinole to July 31st.
And the second is?
Second.
Okay, so we have the two Davids. David Hudson made the motion, and it was seconded by David Durant. Okay. Are there any comments or questions from the audience? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objections or abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we move on to item number 6 on our agenda. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Commissioners. This project is this item is a bit unusual because it's going to both the Planning Committee and to the Administration Projects Committee, and that's because there are 4 resolutions involved, 2 of which normally come through this committee and 2 of which go through the APC. This is a request to either approve or revise some resolutions to help fund projects that are part of the Hercules Intermodal Transit Center. On page 6.5, there's a description of the requested actions. The first is to revise Resolution 1206P to extend its period by another 5 years. Resolution 1208P, which had previously appropriated $2.356 million for the construction of the Path to Transit project, and they're asking for a request to increase that amount by $2 million. This is part of the $7.5 million for the Hercules train station that was set aside in Measure J. The actions that apply to this, that this committee normally reviews, are to approve Resolution 1542G, which would appropriate $1.24 million from Program 12, which is the TLC program, for the capital cost of building the Bay Trail gap closure, which would connect the eastern terminus with the western terminus of the Bay Trail, and would go through the waterfront district in Hercules, and also the approval of Resolution 1543G, which would appropriate $600,000 from the Pedestrian Bicycle and Trail Facilities Program for the construction of the Creekside Trail gap closure, which would run along the north side of Refugio Creek, connecting the trail that ultimately goes to the San Francisco Bay Ridge Trail, but also connects to the Bay Trail. And tonight we have representatives from the City of Hercules here, and you can see there's a PowerPoint associated with, and I'd first like to introduce the mayor, who will begin the presentation.
Hi, Sherry McCoy, Mayor of the City of Hercules. The Intermodal Transit Center represents a major project which will provide benefit to the City of Hercules, West County, and the region as a whole. enhancing not only regional connectivity as a transit hub and a transit-oriented development, but with components in future phases that will aid in goods movement in conjunction with advances on this corridor that were recently announced. This phase, the Path to Transit, will provide the initial level of transit not only within the local community, but also will draw cars off the highly congested I-80 corridor through easy access to bus service. The recently completed Bay Trail segment gives bike and pedestrian access to the ITC. Future phases will add additional transit options to the ITC. Through this phased approach, each provides independent transit benefits as well as stepping stones to the full project. As the number one priority for the City of Hercules, the community has been working on this project for a long time and has been actively engaged in the process and celebrates each phase along the way. The City and I thank you for your ongoing support and hope that you will approve this appropriation of funds for the Path to Transit phase. And I want to introduce our City Manager, David Biggs.
Thank you. As you already noted, we do tend to travel in packs in Hercules, so we brought a smaller pack this evening. Coincidentally, yesterday was my first anniversary as the city manager of Hercules, so it's great to have been here. Jokingly said they're throwing a parade on Saturday to mark my first anniversary like they did to welcome me last year. And some of my employees said, oh, so that must mean you're off probation. I noted city managers are on perpetual probation, but 1 year is great. It's been a very exciting time in Hercules. And one of the things that impressed me the most is in the year I've been there and from the very beginning is the community's commitment to this project. A lot of times it's not usual at a small community. Hercules is basically still a bedroom community. We have a lot of residents who do commute, but that is willing to host a regional facility like this and is actually embraces that. One of the questions I get most often out at community meetings is when are we going to get the next elements here? And one of the nice things about that is we are willing to host this regional intermodal transportation center that will serve not only West County, but it will link together eventually train, ferry, and expanded bus service here at one point. The existing Hercules Transportation Center, Transit Center, which is the BART Park and Ride lot, already demonstrates a lot of success in getting people off of 80. They stop in Hercules for informal carpooling. They also utilize the Transbay service, the very successful Link service operated by WestCat, who's our partner in this next phase as well, together with the local JPX service, which provides express connections to BART service through El Cerrito del Norte. So people are using BART to get to Oakland and other destinations when they're not going to San Francisco. So the good news for the Regional Intermodal Transportation Center here in Hercules has been very successful in attracting a variety of funding sources, and we really thank the authority for their support. But that does lead to sometimes to some complications when you've got Tiger grants and you've got state STIP funding and we've got other types of funding that falls in as far as how to arrange our phasing. We also do have pending right now a Tiger 2015 grant, which has been submitted for some of the later phases. We did get support letters for our entire county congressional delegation. They signed one letter. Our supervisor, the 3 rail operators, Union Pacific, and the 2 passenger service operators, Caltrans. So again, the project seems to have a lot of support from regional and statewide partners. So we're anxious to move forward with this phase because we think it also will. We scored very highly in last year's Tiger grant process, but one of the things that since we didn't have this next phase under construction, we think it handicapped us a little bit there. We were one of the 5% of applications that got recommended to leadership. We just fell out in the regional allocation of funding. The phases have been realigned on the project, and our Public Works Director, Mike Roberts, is going to walk you through that briefly. And we've done that in great part because of advice we've gotten from the CCTA staff. I want to compliment Ross Chittenden, who spent a lot of time, given his background and experience, helping us make sure we've ticked and tied things with the goal of getting a train to stop here sooner rather than later. There's a lot of moving parts, but we've really downscaled some of the elements in order to make sure we are able to provide basic train service as quickly as possible. The site is a California Catalyst project. It's also a priority development area under the MTC criteria and ABAG. It's an anchor for the Northern Waterfront Initiative at this end with the other end being anchored in East County. And we're building on existing successful new urbanist neighborhoods, and this is where the neighbors in the area, some of whom commute, but others are just really again, asking every time, when are we going to see? I had a call from a Pinole resident this week that would like to be able to commute on the train from, believe it or not, from Hercules to Martinez where he works. So these are the types of calls we get from some of the local residents. The one thing I wanted to talk about is the city has staffed up to be able to deliver the project in partnership with CCTA. And with the current phase, we've had the assistance of CCTA and some construction management assistance through you. We have a new city manager on board in the form of myself. I guess I can't say I'm new anymore. I've been through everything at least once. A new public works director, Mike Roberts, who you'll hear from shortly. And we are planning to add a dedicated project manager. That'll be a consultant position, but that's one of the recommendations that we've been talking with CCTA to. We're a small city. This is our highest priority, but we want to make sure we're equipped to deliver on this next phase. We'll probably be back to talk to CCTA about a little bit more of a hands-on role when we get into more of the activities that involve actual work in the railroad right-of-way and where they have some more expertise. But to build this extension of John Muir Parkway, the bridge across the creek, and do the creek work, we're very comfortable that we can deliver that successfully. So the appropriations we're asking for this evening, which are already programmed through Measure J, are needed to allow construction to commence on this phase this summer. We're out to bid on the project. Bids are due in July, and we're scheduled to award them on July 28th. And then, and our permits are in line with the Water Board and the Army Corps. And so we think, thank goodness, the stars have all aligned, and we can start this project in August. So again, we're hoping you'll provide us with a favorable recommendation, and we look forward to inviting you to an opening of the Bay Trail segment, probably in September, and a ribbon cutting for this element in August. Thank you very much. And now Mike Roberts will walk you through some of the details.
Good evening, Chair Abelson and Commissioners. As David mentioned, I'm Mike Roberts. I'm the Public Works Director for the City of Hercules. Thank you for the opportunity to give you a short presentation on the path to transit phase of the Regional Intermodal Transit Center, which, as I'm sure you realize, we're very excited about in Hercules. This will be a team effort on the presentation with Terry Bowen from Gray Bowen Scott. I'll be doing the narrative, but don't be mistaken, we're saving the best for last, so Terry will be responding probably to most of your questions. So the vision of the ITC is the convergence of train, bus, and ferry service in a single location. It'll be the first such facility on the West Coast and will serve as a major transportation hub for West County and the region. As seen on the location map behind you, the ITC is strategically located along Interstate 80 corridor, which is one of the most heavily traveled routes in the Bay Area, and is at the intersection of Highway 4. It's approximately 3/4 mile from the intersection, or about 2 minutes, which, as someone who travels Highway 4, seems like a very short distance to get onto transit versus driving down busy 80. It's also within walking distance from existing and future planned transit-oriented developments, and is on the shoreline overlooking the San Pablo Bay. It's a phased approach to the ITC, as David mentioned, to reflect current funding opportunities. Each phase has independent utility and public benefits in addition to incrementally advancing toward completing build-out of the ITC. In your upper right in red is the Bay Trail East, which is under construction. The path to transit is shown in blue, and it has 3 phases: the John Muir Parkway extension, Bayfront Boulevard extension, and Refugio Creek Trail installation, which is the triangle you see in blue. We're also looking at the Bay Trail West, potentially for construction next summer. These elements will be discussed in detail on the following slides. So the city has been busy delivering the first phase of the ITC, the Bay Trail East. In August, we'll close out the $11.3 million construction contract. And as David mentioned, we plan on a grand opening in September, so please bring your walking shoes. It's what's shown in green in the upper right. So here's some photos of the Bay Trail East. In the lower right, hard to see, but there's 2 tiered parallel retaining walls that are approximately 3,000 feet long and will provide for 3,000 feet of space for the new rail tracks for the future rail station. Oh, go back, sorry. Yeah, in the middle of the page towards your left, You can see the benched area between the two walls, which will house 3,000 feet of new multi-purpose bay trail, and will connect to the existing bay trail in Victoria by the Bay to the north, which leads to Rodeo. And the trail will offer panoramic views of the San Pablo Bay and beyond. Additionally, the future railroad track improvements are dependent upon relocation of fuel and fiber optic lines that are currently located in the railroad right-of-way. This phase is designed and constructed to provide for future relocation of these facilities also in the benched area. So in purple and blue and yellow there is the $14.2 million Path to Transit, which is the second phase of the ITC and the subject of your consideration tonight. It's currently out to bid with the bid opening on July 9th and has three major elements. The first is extension of John Muir Parkway over North Channel and Bayfront Boulevard over Refugio Creek, and will provide community-friendly features, tree-lined streets, wide sidewalks, pedestrian boulevards at crosswalks. The primary purpose of this element is to provide multimodal access from I-80 Highway 4 San Pablo Avenue to the future train station. It also completes connectivity to the Tiger II funded grant, the Bay Trail East. The next photo is the artistic rendering of Bayfront Boulevard Bridge, which spans over Refugio Creek. It will serve as a nexus between several elements of the ITC, including the return leg of the future transit loop. The second major element is the restoration of 1,500 linear feet of Refugio Creek in North Channel. It's a precursor to the future relocation of the restoration of Refugio Creek at the mouth of San Pablo Bay, so that it's not in conflict with the future trail station and platform. The restoration work also provides compensatory wetland mitigation for the future rail station, and will also include the installation of the multi-purpose trail, which is shown in yellow, overlooking restored Refugio Creek, which will connect to the ITC and San Pablo Boulevard. One more. So the third major element of Path to Transit is to establish transit service to the ITC, and as you can see from the current service diagram from WestCat, the area is lacking in service, and the city is working in partnership with WestCat on the best service delivery options so service can commence when Path to Transit is completed in fall 2016. We believe the access improvements will increase demand for bus service. Additionally, we've received requests from surrounding neighborhoods for transit. We think the bus service could include morning and evening express trans-based service for commuters or linkage to the Hercules Transit Center with fixed routes throughout the day. The bus route will be up and down John Muir with a stop on Bayfront Boulevard. The key is to establish interim loop to turn around, which is currently envisioned on the vacant property at the end of Bayfront Boulevard. Last week, city staff and WestCat staff met with MTC representatives to look at grant opportunities. We'll be submitting a joint application on transit demand management and managed lane grants. There currently is existing parking available, 90 stalls that are available on an interim basis, and funding is included in the line item for Path to Transit to construct the interim loop, wayfinding signs, and such. And we look forward to working with the authority staff to further revise and refine this element. Last slide here. As far as future phases, the remaining phases will be built as funding becomes available. The city's aggressively pursuing funding opportunities at local, regional, state, and federal levels. And the phases have been defined so the city can tailor deliverable projects to match the fund types. As David mentioned, we've been successful with approximately a dozen grants, and we anticipate we'll have similar success out into the future. In addition to support on the recent Tiger grant from state and elected officials, we also received support from Capital Corridor, UP, Caltrans, San Joaquin JPA, and we look forward to working with CCTA as funding opportunities come about. Lastly, I'd just like to thank you for your time here today, and also CCTA staff for their cooperation and guidance through this process. At this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this whole time, and you mentioned at the end, San Joaquin Regional has been, you said, supportive. Letters, what have they done?
They submitted a letter of support for the Tiger 2015 applications.
This is Dan Levitt and Don and Freitas, not Freitas, I went back too far. Dan Levitt and Don Tadson. You know, I'm going back to that meeting we had at the Air District, and Damien said, if you wanted trains, we got all kinds of money and stuff like that. And I'm just wondering if this isn't something, as the file gets bigger with people that support it, to try and go back and see if there's some other money for that too. But it's just thinking out loud. And the big question I always ask is, you've taken us through West County and everybody's fine at the RTPC. You've seen this and no problem, right?
I don't know if we've seen this version. We have seen an overall version. We've seen detailed versions. Have we seen the
There's no problem with your RTPC as well?
No,
Okay.
there's no problem.
All right.
Real quickly, yes, WICTAC is, we're part of their action plan and included in past RTPs. Certainly, it's submitted as part of the update as well. Then also, we are scheduled through their funding through their regional development impact fee fund. I think we've got, if the revenue comes in, approximately $13 million committed through WICTAC, and part of that will be applied to future phases. We're especially looking at using that to sort of fill any gaps we might have as we're successful in getting other funding. So it's nice to have that local source. We're hoping, of course, not to have to tap all of it, but the revenue hasn't come in as development slowed down.
Let me just clarify. The worst thing in the world any of us could do is to say, yeah, we like this is great, before the RTPC's even seen it. And what you're saying is it's okay. It's fine, and you don't want to get a yes vote here and a no vote there.
No, it
Okay.
doesn't have to go back to them at this point.
Okay.
It is part of their action plan. So.
Okay.
And John Nemeth is here. He and I spoke about that today, so he might be able to add. Well, there he is.
I'll just concur. Maybe we can get a whole group of people up here at the microphone, but I'll just concur with what David Biggs said. We haven't seen this exact presentation, but it's a long-standing policy priority, so we're very supportive of this recommendation.
Okay, are we ready for questions then? Are any other questions, comments?
Yep.
Dave?
Yeah, the other David. Okay, so I have a series of questions that let me start with the fact that I've been supportive of this project for a very long time, as some folks know. I'm concerned about the scope creep, and I'm concerned about the length of the additional time requested and what that is likely to do to the cost of the project. So first of all, tell me, what's the impact of the currently proposed phasing on the overall project delivery? What gets handled, what doesn't get handled, that, if the rest of the project doesn't come to fruition, is sort of lost investment? What can be used for other purposes, those sorts of things?
So yeah, the current phase, of course, will establish transit and also connectivity with the Bay Trail. We recently went through an exercise to rephase the entire project to move essential items forward and items that could be constructed at a later date but weren't essential to get the train to stop to the rear. So for example, there's a transit loop section that used to be before the train station building was moved to the back. We've also rescoped the project. It was rather fancy, I guess I could say, originally, and we scaled it down to the basic infrastructure needed. So I think we cut something like $11 million off the train station itself and just went with the bare bones capital corridor requirements. So we've taken a lot of steps to scale the project down to just its core elements and then rephase to just the essential elements to get the train to stop.
So what happens if the train doesn't stop? What's the impact there on the investment made?
Well, currently there is a large demand for transit service for links and also in the vicinity. So this will be a transit center at minimum. But we do plan on moving forward and meeting with Capital Corridor and getting the train to stop. It's going to be, a bit of an effort, but we're assembling a team to meet with them. Additionally, though, we will have basically completed Bay Trail all the way through Hercules, from Pinole to Rodeo, and then up along the Creekside Trail, ultimately to the Ridge Trail. So there's independent utility and public benefit.
Yeah, please. Whoops.
There we go. I'd also like to point out that Capital Corridor in the past has been very supportive of this project. When the city 2 years ago, or actually also 3 years ago, went in front of the California Transportation Commission for a request of the STIP funds, Capital Corridor was actually, gave a letter of support.
And I was just going to add, they did send a letter of support for the Tiger Grant recently, both San Joaquin and Caltrain. It's not Caltrain, sorry, that's my old life, Capital Corridor. Recently also, you probably read, actually we got the information from Ross that as part of the first cap and trade funding, the Capital Corridor system got some money to improve this corridor. Basically, part of the money is going to improve service between Pinole and Martinez. So they anticipate that our work also contributes to that overall effort, will allow them to reduce travel times. And we have met with them about their technical specifications. We are in their long-term service plan still. So again, I wouldn't imagine that we would proceed with the actual the track improvements would have benefit even if there is no rail station, because it's part of reducing travel time on the corridor. But I would imagine we would have a commitment from both San Joaquin and Capital Corridor before we would build the station and track improvement. So it's a little bit of a chicken and egg scenario. They want to see that we've got the other things in order and are actually proceeding, and then we have to meet some sort of technical thresholds, which I think we can. And so we are partnering with them in part of their overall plans to improve service in the corridor, and we're contributing to the enhancement of goods movement and ability to pull freight trains off, which inhibits some of their service goals for passenger service. So it is very much a partnership with these multiple agencies. So we believe we'll be successful, but we haven't actually called that question yet. But I think working with CCTA and others, we will be successful.
Okay. Two more quick questions. Actually, I think only one more for you, which is, it looks like the last component of it is constructing the piece that gets the buses moving. What sort of level of commitment do we have right now from the bus services to actually engage and show up?
Yeah, we've met with WestCat staff. They're very supportive of the project. They agree the area is underserved. Additionally, they think there's unmet demand for the link service, which goes to the Transbay Terminal. We submitted a formal request in writing, which was reviewed at their last board meeting. Currently, it's working through, the board and the approval process. So the commitment's there, but we need to go through the process. Additionally, we are applying jointly for a couple of grant opportunities. So I'd say they're very committed and excited about the opportunity.
And if they same sort of question, if they don't show up, what does that do in terms of the rest of the project? If the bus company says, look, we'd love to, it's lovely, it's a wonderful hub, but we can't afford to get there, what's the next step?
Well, I know we do have two of our council members are on the board. And so, again, staff's very supportive. I don't think that's going to be a possible outcome.
Excuse me, if
they've
you
also,
could come to the mic.
Oops. He was just giving
I'm sorry,
some
they've
guidance.
also...
We're actually being broadcast.
Okay, WestCat also just recently, I think, receives from RM2 measures to expand their operating area.
And that was said by the other speaker?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd also like to point out that the other important feature of this Path to Transit project is providing the connectivity from the Bay Trail, which is currently under construction. It's the Tiger 2 project, and FHWA is very, very interested in having this project constructed so that Bay Trail connects.
Yep, that makes sense. Great. Thank you very much.
Okay. We do have some speaker slips, but are there any other members of the committee that want to that have a question? No? Okay, so then let's go to the public speakers. The first one is Susan Tolley.
For
Welcome.
the opportunity to speak up. Hercules has kind of a small town feel. I think I know more people than I ever met in all the places I lived when I was a corporate vagabond. So I feel safe in saying, all the people that I know support the project. Nobody's against it. Everybody understands the benefits. I think people are, more than most places, understand what's going on in the city. Most of us know the history. So, again, I'd just like to express the support on behalf of myself and all of my neighbors. I live in the Hercules waterfront, by the way. I guess that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Susan Keefe.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to us. I'm also a member of the community that joins all of this, and I've been involved in the community aspect of this for quite a while. I've been here before, and I thank you very much for your support and for your interest. At one of our previous meetings, one of our other speakers said you can't get to phase 2 unless you complete phase 1. I think this is a good point to say you can't get to phase 3 unless we complete phase 2. And phase 2 for us walkers is exciting. The Bay Trail in San Francisco is a wonderful project. Anybody who enjoys our beautiful San Francisco Bay will certainly enjoy walking along that section. If you are a walker, you get to certain points and then you have to get in your car and drive around to where you can find other sections to pick up. So this is a wonderful opportunity. I was also a member of the Waterfront Task Force that kind of started with all of those, yes, grandiose plans. It was wonderful and exciting. We are down to earth now, and I really do think that Hercules has done a fabulous job of regrouping on this and getting us down to brass tacks and not going to phase 5 without funding for phase 1 and not going to phase 2 without funding for it and so forth. So we're taking the step-by-step measured approach, making sure all the ducks are lined up, I think is a really good, responsible way that our city is now handling the situation. So I would really love your support. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't have any other speaker slips, but are there any other members of the audience who would like to speak? Okay, not seeing any. I'll bring it back to the committee. Any more comments, or is there a motion?
Just a comment so I can second her motion. You brought something up that I hadn't even thought about, but the importance of it, I can't understate. That you're going to have a bus that runs into the Trans-Bay Terminal. I can tell you when BART shut down and some of us that were stuck at our meeting in San Francisco, and our new building's going to be at the Trans-Bay Terminal, a lot of buildings around the Trans-Bay Terminal. If you're doing business from the northern counties, that's going to be worth its weight in gold. More than gold if BART shuts down again for any time. The bridges just don't work. Uber was overrun. This is, like Dave said, don't let that one back out. The rest of them, we'll argue with them, but getting into the Trans-Bay Terminal in some kind of express form is extremely important in this project.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention, before I move, that I appreciate there was mention of the Northern Waterfront Initiative and the freight train being able to move off and unload. So very good questions, serious things we need to think about, but it does help not only for transportation of getting people off freeways, but it is that goods movement that is going to be so critical to marketing not only the Northern Waterfront. I know Hercules has the bio industry, well, Bio-Rad's there, but when we talk about industrial uses, there's that old concept of manufacturing and steel mills and what have you, and steel mills are great. We love steel mills, but there's other kinds of industry that are looking to come to Contra Costa County, and so I will move the staff's recommendation, if you need me to read everything, but I don't think you do, you've got it all there. So I move the staff recommendation on all these various resolutions.
I didn't quite hear who the second was. Okay. There's been a motion. Okay, yeah. by Karen Mitchoff and a second by David Hudson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Do you have a comment? Yep. Okay, the next item is other business, but I don't think there's any other business. Okay, and no news clippings, correspondence. So we are adjourned to the next meeting, which is not next month, but rather on September the 2nd. So have a very nice 4th of July.